Takamura versus Chihiro. Both incredibly strong swordsmen of their respective verses, so let's see how they stack up in a fight. Takamura is the strongest character in the Sakamoto Days verse, so he should upscale from the other characters' feats. However, scaling Takamura can get a little wonky depending on what material decide to take into account, so I'm going to be taking a look at his stats in multiple tiers, beginning with AP. In line with my previous versus battle, Takamura's AP at the low end should be anywhere between large building and city block level. This is based off him cutting Tokyo Tower. However, the next tier of power Takamura could reach comes from a bunch of statements from external material. The fanbook states that Takamura has infinite stats, and there are also a bunch of statements saying that Takamura can cut literally anything in a single slash. The Volume 19 extras and several excerpts from Psycho Jump 2025 all have some variation of the saying that Takamura's swordsmanship allows him to cut stuff with one slash, so if you want to take those literally, then Takamura should be able to cut just about anything. Additionally, another statement from the fanbook alongside stuff from Sakamoto Holidays implies that Takamura is essentially always holding back, which would explain why his ability to cut everything isn't always shown off. So if you take Takamura at his lowest and only use the material shown off in the mainline manga, he's probably large building the city block level. But if you want to take into account the external media, then Takamura shoots up to potentially immeasurable levels of AP. His speed is a similar story. Takamura should be around Mach 60 since Fat Sakamoto, who was at 30% of his prime, performed a Mach 18 feat of blocking a bullet point blank. This makes Prime Sakamoto around Mach 60, and it doesn't really matter if you think Takamura is stronger than Prime Sakamoto or not. Even if he isn't stronger, Takamura should still be around Mach 60 based off his superiority to the other top tiers who are narratively implied to be around Prime Sakamoto's power, and there are, again, a ton of external statements that say Takamura is the strongest. Now, if we want to break into higher tiers of scaling, we can actually take a look at the second Sakamoto Days light novel, in which the JCC trio of Sakamoto, Nagumo, and Rion were actually able to dodge a barrage of lasers while looking for the database. The novel says that the lasers rained down from the ceiling and the trio were able to avoid them, meaning that they could possibly have relativistic combat speeds. Moreover, since Takamura should be massively stronger than the trio, he should be significantly faster than light. Takamura's slash is also described as a ray of light in the novel, which you could take as hyperbole, or take it literally and say that Takamura has relativistic combat speeds. This leaves Takamura at anywhere between Mach 60 to Mach 874,000, so there's a big range. Takamura's durability should scale to around his AP, which is massively variable. We see him take damage from Gaku and Takazuki though, which likely means that he isn't infinitely durable as the fanbook might imply. Outside of this though, we don't really have much for Takamura's durability. This is the same for his hacks and intelligence. Takamura largely fights off instinct, working almost exclusively off the bloodlust of other people, but there have been times when he shows a higher level of consciousness. Takamura decided to help Sakamoto by cutting Tokyo Tower, and he also subverted Izuki's expectations by showing that he is in fact not senile. Furthermore, Takamura sharpened his sword with Sakamoto's bullets and was able to cut off his arm and then reattach it to unbind himself, but that's really about it for intelligence. His hacks are literally just that he's really good at detecting bloodlust and that his cuts are so clean that he can reattach his own limbs. Now that we have Takamura scaled, let's take a look at Chihiro. Chihiro's scaling is generally tough to do since Kagurabachi is still such a new series, but I'll do my best. Hirohiko's use of play was enough to start destroying the entire hotel he was in, and this was an injured Hirohiko's first time using Kumeyuri. This Hirohiko also briefly clashes with Chihiro, and then later goes on to tag team with Chihiro to clash with Samura, which caused shockwaves that were destroying the hotel. Because of this, I'd say that large building level is a safe estimate for Chihiro's AP. I've seen some say that Cloud Gouger's ice is at city block level, and since a much weaker Chihiro was able to cut through that, he could potentially go up to city block level as well. For speed, there is definitely some contention. Cloud Gouger's Mei is consistently described as a lightning bolt or thunder, and it also has the same attraction to lightning rods that actual lightning has, which would imply that it's just straight up real lightning. This would mean that beginning of series Chihiro would be around Mach 1283 because he is able to keep up with Sojo after he learns to cloak himself in Mei. During Sojo's fight against the anti-Cloud Gouger team, Shiumi is consistently able to block Mei, but since she and the rest of the team get blitzed once Sojo cloaks himself, implying that Sojo's speed surpasses that of just shooting off Mei, Chihiro with 3 times Nishiki is faster than Sojo with 2 times Mei, so Chihiro at this point could just straight up be faster than lightning. Obviously, once Chihiro learns White Purity style, he becomes even faster, so he just upskills from there. For a more conservative estimate, you again have beginning of series Chihiro dodging explosions, which would make him somewhere in the hypersonic tier. Again, White Purity style Chihiro with a better connection to N10 would just make him even faster, so he gets upscaled by an unknown amount. Durability-wise, we have Chihiro's statement that if he had focused on countering instead of deflecting Samura's attack, he would have just straight up lost his arm. Samura is likely large building level as he single-handedly flew through the Bloodshed Hotel to stop Hirohiko's rampage, and he was also the main reason for the shockwaves that were again destroying the hotel. This would mean that Chihiro has durability just under large building level, albeit likely still in that tier since he was able to deflect the attack instead of just having his arm obliterated. If you think he scales to city block levels of AP because of Cloud Gouger's ice, then his durability is likely in that range too. For hacks and intelligence, Chihiro actually has a lot. N10 has 3 abilities at base, being Kuro, Aka, and Nishiki. Kuro lets him send out large ranged slashes or a barrage of smaller ones, along with sending out goldfish to sense the environment and blind his opponents. Aka just lets him copy sorcery, which won't be useful here, and it's also temporary, and Nishiki is just straight up a stat boost that negates debuffs. And intelligence-wise, Chihiro is actually super smart. He's got a natural ability to just pick up on techniques through literally just watching people, as shown when he instantly picks up on Hirohiko's style with the sword and White Purity style through just pure observation. He's also a very strategic and level-headed fighter, prioritizing logic in his goals over raw instinct and emotion. With Takamura and Chihiro scaled, let's see how they do in a fight. If we take low balls of both characters, we see that they're actually pretty similar in AP. Takamura and Chihiro are both around that large building level at the low end, and speed-wise, Takamura's Mach 60 is faster than Chihiro dodging an explosion, which is around Mach 8, but this Chihiro wasn't using Nishiki and is also way weaker since it's the beginning of the series, so I'm willing to say that they're somewhat similar in speed. Again, their durabilities are similar, which just leaves hacks and intelligence being the deciding factor. Chihiro clearly takes it in both hacks and intelligence, so I can see Chihiro winning against Takamura when they're both taken at their lowest estimates. However, it's when you take high balls of the characters that things change up. Chihiro and Takamura both scale up to city block level AP, but Takamura has the potential to scale infinitely higher, so Takamura takes this. In speed, Chihiro goes up to being a lightning timer, while Takamura is potentially the speed of light if not faster, so without even talking about hacks or intelligence, Takamura should just completely blitz and one-shot Chihiro. However, there are a few problems I have with this. Sure, it's implied and stated a few times that Takamura is holding back in external material, but in the mainline series, we see him get injured several times by attacks that should in no way be as strong as Takamura himself. Moreover, we see that his katana is damaged by Gaku kicking his arm at it, so there's the possibility that Takamura's katana would literally just break if you were to swing it at full power, which might be another reason that he holds back. While it's definitely interesting to think that Takamura has this bottomless well of strength that he's just hiding, I'm not sure if I buy into the idea that all of Takamura's stats are infinite. There is precedent in the mainline series for Takamura being light speed, such as Sakamoto and Kanaguri maneuvering around lasers, and the fact that Sakamoto can react to Gozu's electricity, so I'm willing to say that he's the speed of light, but to say that he has infinite durability or AP is kind of insane, so I'll take a middle ground of both characters. With Chihiro and Takamura at their middle grounds, they're likely very similar in AP, with Takamura potentially being higher, but Takamura completely stomps in speed by several orders of magnitude, so much so that it's not worth discussing the other stats. Using what I think is most in line for each character's scaling, Takamura takes this and it's not even close.